Dear guests, please take your seats because we should start. Um, First of all, thank you all of you that stay in the afternoon, but remember that there is one session more after that. So let me introduce first my esteemed panelists and speakers. Um, We will talk about how to build resilience in public administration and society, and why exactly public administration and society, just because actually many of the measures or countermeasures, if I can say, for countering disinformation, for countering information manipulation and foreign interference, actually depend on the stable and strong cooperation between executives, but also legislative power and the society as a whole. So this was the reason why we try to bring together in this panel people that are coming from the different domains. So we'll start with Mr. Georgi Georgiev, who is currently the director of the Information Center at the Bulgarian Ministry of Defense, which plays a vital role in the Stratcom efforts, delivering government defense communication through both traditional and modern media platforms. They do have their own newspaper called Bulgarian Army, but also a TV channel. But they're also quite actually very active in social media and platforms like YouTube. The Information Center has started actively to debunk disinformation narratives related to the military and NATO, to publish regular analysis regarding foreign information manipulation and interference. And thus, it has positioned itself as a source of accurate information about defense policy and the Bulgarian military in general. So it's my pleasure to give the floor first to Mr. Georgiev. Mr. Georgiev, the floor is yours. They will put it the...
Okay.
Oops. They will start the presentation and then you can...
Okay. So, do you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning good afternoon to everybody. First, I would like to thank to the organizers for the invitation to present the Ministry of Defense Information Center at this prestigious forum. I would like to congratulate the organizers and all of you for bringing together representatives of institutions, business, and civil society, giving them the opportunity to look for solutions to one of the biggest challenges of our time: the fight against misinformation and the damage it causes to the state, institutions and society, and every single persons are very hard and visible, and that's why we need a clear efforts to make these damages a little bit, how can I say, a little bit not so visible and not so hard. So my name is Georgi Georgiev, and I hold a PhD in political science with my dissertation focusing on populism and nationalism in Southeastern Europe. Now I'm proud to serve as the director of the Information Center to the Ministry of Defense. Today, we will address a pressing and complex issue: how to build a resilience in public administrations and society. As many of you are aware, this information is not simply misleading news or conspiracy theories. It is a deliberate strategy aimed to weakening democratic institutions, manipulating public opinion, and fostering distrust within society. Disinformation, it's pervasive, but many of us here may wonder why it finds such fertile ground in our country. In my opinion, it's historical distrust of the Bulgarian institutions rooted in our history in the Ottoman period and was reinforced by the decades of communist rule. That has fostered an antagonistic relationships between citizens and their state. The tradition of mistrust of the citizens to their own state obliged the institution now to take a strategic effort to counter disinformation. I dare to say the military are and have considerable potential to build public trust, because in many sociological information showed that in Bulgaria, the army, the Ministry of Defense, it's the institution, one of the institutions which have respect of the people and trust of the society. Let's look at an example that demonstrates the proactive role that public institutions can play in combating disinformation. That is the Bulgarian Ministry of Defense's Information Center. I would like to emphasize that the capability we are trying to build and weaponize, it's still far from its potential. But I believe we have directed our efforts in the right direction. The Information Center currently stands as the only structure of its kind in Bulgaria, consolidating all modern information channels, television, newspaper, websites, and social platform. Can we see the video? So we have technical issue, but we can continue. Okay. So what we are doing. The Ministry of Defense Information Center can play a critical role in informing the public about national security issues. By offering clear and accurate information on Bulgaria's alliances and defense strategies, the Center provides a counter-narrative to disinformation. The Center serves as a fact-checking authority on security topics, swiftly addressing any misinformation that might mislead the public. Through real-time monitoring of online disinformation, the Information Center seeks to identify emerging narratives and address them before they spread widely. This proactive approach is essential in protecting public perception. For example, if a false information about NATO's presence in Bulgaria appears online, the Center can release factual statements, videos, and infographics to dispel such claims. Public outreach and education. The Center engages in regular outreach media appearances, online campaigns, and public seminars to strengthen the trust in Bulgarian defense institutions and educate the public on identifying disinformation. Such initiatives foster a culture of informed citizens, reducing the long-term impact of disinformation. Over the past few years, the Information Center has undergone a transit to a better align with the Ministry of Defense communication strategy, focusing on 4 priorities. Before continue, I should give credit to my colleagues, few of them who are here, and to my predecessor, Director of Information Center, who started this reform and who started and tried to weaponize the Information Center with strategy and focusing on the right priorities. The first one, it's raising Army prestige. Our information policy aims to reach the broadest possible audience, emphasizing military service as a matter of honor and prestige. The second priority of our communications efforts are to put focus on Army modernization. Through our media platforms, we communicate the significant advance in the modernizations of the armed forces in the recent years. The third priority is the war in Ukraine. We follow the Ministry and the government's policy that Bulgaria remains in solidarity with Ukraine, supporting its legitimate efforts to oppose Russian aggression. Our information policy aligns with the broader security policy of the EU and NATO, committed to protecting its citizens. Combating disinformation and fake news. This is our fourth priority. Through our information policy, we address Russia's ongoing hybrid actions that seek influence to Bulgarians' sovereign decision-making. The Information Center's departments work actively on these priorities, producing documentaries, news reports, analyzes in-depth articles and content for both the Bulgarian Army newspaper and our electronic and social platforms, ensuring broad outreach to our audience. We have 2 analytical departments, monitoring and planning, that guide our information policy, which is implemented by the production department. This includes military TV channel, Army media websites, Bulgarian Army newspaper, along with the profiles on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. That was our priorities. Military TV channel. It's launched on January 7th, 2003. It transitioned to 24 hours programming from Sofia in 2004, 20 years ago. With distribution via satellite and over 70 cable operators, military TV channel reached over 200 countries, establishing itself as a leader in the Ministry information policy on security and defense. The channel produces approximately 60 educational documentaries annually, focusing on military careers and promoting a broad program for public interest, including European films and educational series. Bulgarian newspaper is the oldest military newspaper in Europe. The Bulgarian Army Weekly has been in publication since 1892, continuing a legacy of informative military journalism. Distributed every Friday, it is also available for free online at armymedia.bg. After my panel, I will leave some newspapers because from today's edition. Armymedia.bg, it's a recently redesigned website, and it provides photo, video content prioritized for defense and security news. It includes separate section for national and international military news and features of PDF version of Bulgarian Army newspaper. All three channels have a section that is focused on fact-checking and countering disinformation. It is called Disinforadar. On social platforms, our newest component, social media profiles on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok allow us to reach diverse audience. Especially, it is very important for us to attract younger viewers with TikTok and with Facebook to provide more analytical material for an older audience. By broadening our social media presence, we aim to attract people of active age to the Army, presenting it as a viable career path. Finally, I'm pleased to announce that the armymedia.bg have a mobile app that has been active from a month now. I encourage you to download it and to share your feedback with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Georgiev. I would suggest that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the panel, so to be possible to address all of the panelists. So without further ado, I'll pass the floor to my fellow colleague Alexander Politov, who will present some of the recent findings on which are the social and collective drivers that actually make possible or susceptible, that make populations susceptible to disinformation. So, Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Todor, for this introduction. We all know that knowledge is the basis of many social happenings, and to have a resilient society, we have to build knowledge. Building knowledge starts with theory. So unlike yesterday's more practical sessions on FIMI, today I will approach this issue from a more abstract and theoretical point of view. My topic is conceptualizing FIMI social and collective drivers in social scientific terms. That means in terms of variables, and how these variables can be operationalized. As you all know, CSD has been very active in disentangling Russian disinformation, propaganda, fake news. It has come up with a large body of knowledge, starting from the seminal editions of the Kremlin Playbook and going through numerous policy analysis, policy briefs, reports, etc. This makes it only natural that we are partnered under a project called Deconspirator, so that we could build on that knowledge, but also be part of the overall efforts to counter foreign information manipulation and interference. I'll open a bracket to say a few words about the project. First of all, I want to tell you that there are some leaflets outside on the table. So if you're interested in more in-depth information, you can pick up some of these leaflets. The Deconspirator project aims to understand the success factors, manifestation, and impacts of Russian and Chinese FIMI, and to provide data-driven policy solutions. Beneficiaries of the project are policymakers, representatives of civil society, the epistemic communities of academics, fact-checkers, etc. And the objectives of the project are to analyze the strategies and tactics of those who initiate FIMI, understand how FIMI spreads within the communities. The project is at the intersection of policy analysis and scientific inquiry. It is funded by Horizon Europe. There are 13 partners, almost half of which are big European universities. The project is in its first year, which is basically devoted to collecting data and to reviewing the existing knowledge on the topic of FIMI and other FIMI-related terms like disinformation, propaganda, fake news, cognitive warfare, conspiracy theories, etc. What we as a partner under the project did, which was one of our tasks, was to collect and identify and collect scholarly literature on FIMI and to find the social and collective drivers of FIMI. In order to understand the collective dynamics of FIMI exposures and group behavior, provide an understanding of how these drivers influence the spread of FIMI, we detected a major research gap in the literature insofar as the drivers were not very well conceptualized. We had to infer these drivers quite often from the context or from the goals of FIMI, disinformation, and so on and so forth. To open parentheses, FIMI is a relatively new concept, so much of the literature does not directly deal with FIMI, but we adapted FIMI drivers from other related terms, like I mentioned a little while ago. Moreover, FIMI drivers are not very well conceptualized as variables. There are two groundbreaking reports of the European External Action Service, which define FIMI and analyze the actors, process, and channels through which FIMI operates, as well as goals and potential consequences. The approach is very actor-centric and deals with processes, but yet there is no precise definition of FIMI drivers that are attributable to FIMI, as well as their operationalization. Of course, there is no clear delineation of social scientific variables. I will not go through the definition for the want of time, but what is important to know is that although FIMI overlaps with disinformation or propaganda, it is not only that. The FIMI framework represents two things. One of the things is that it is an analytical framework for FIMI threat response. It's a a framework to respond to FIMI attacks on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is for analyzing FIMI. As I said, it is very actor-centric and focused on processes. To put this hodgepodge of drivers into some kind of structure, we decided to look at the 3 levels of analysis, which are the macro level, which examines large-scale social structures, processes, and institutions like whole societies, economies, global systems, or cultures. Meso level, focusing on intermediate social structures or units, and micro level, which is the smallest scale of inquiry, focusing on smaller individual groups, like families, for example. As I said, we came up with a list of drivers. We came up with a list of about 100 drivers, and we intend to come up with a state-of-the-art report, which is not deliverable onto the project, but still we think it is worth doing it, because we can get into these issues in more depth and show up the whole list of drivers. And it is not exhaustive. It could be even more than 100. I will mention a few that are most important. The first group of drivers is linked to politics and the political system, mode of governance, institutional environment, and some of the literature we consulted stipulates that democratic societies are more vulnerable to FIMI due to their openness, high level of diversity, democratic backsliding, dysfunctional governance and state capture are yet another drivers that are conducive to FIMI. Low public trust, of course, is one of the most common drivers. Low trust in general appears almost everywhere as a driver. We can talk about various types of social divisions and polarization, be it economic, social, political, and so on and so forth. And as a matter of fact, polarization appears as one of the most commonly stated drivers in the literature. The media environment is another field that attracts attention in terms of drivers. We again deal with the problem of trust. Low trust in the media has always been an issue, but it is also coupled with media capture, whereby political or economic entities exert excessive control over important media outlets, or cognitive capture, which has to do with how journalists represent or influence content by reflecting their own perceptions and worldviews. As meso level drivers, we can mention social networks and social norms. Social stratification is especially important because quite often FIMI content is targeted to specific audiences. Socioeconomic factors and socio-demographic variables also play part. And of course, other drivers are membership of social identity groups, presence of minority groups, party affiliation, partisanship, also emerge as meso-level factors, enabling factors that may influence people's vulnerability. And of course, political parties with favorable attitudes towards or with close ties with threat actors. And as I mentioned, strategic corruption also can play at this level. I will open another bracket and say that these levels can influence each other on the one hand. On the other hand, one and the same driver can be conceptualized at different levels depending on the size of the social structure that we want to analyze, or the social structure or social group. Okay, I will move fast forward. So the major part of our analysis is how to conceptualize drivers as variables. Usually drivers are broader enabling factors. Variables are smaller and operationalizable, but we still can draw some inferences about how drivers can be transformed into variables for the sake of social scientific research. Independent variables are roughly equated to cause, dependent are effects or outcomes, and the intervening variable is the pathway, mediator, or modifier. And let's take polarization as an example, as one of the most common drivers. If we take a FIMI operation or campaign as the independent variable or the cause, and its goal is to change public opinion, party preferences, electoral behavior, or vote choice, then polarization can help amplify this effect. So in this case, it will be an intervening variable. And from my point of view, we can equate drivers and intervening variables. Again, if we take a FIMI operation campaign, which aims to change or manipulate public opinion or ensure positive coverage, then intervening variables could be media capture or control over media outlets. However, if a FIMI operation is aiming directly to changing the levels of polarization, then polarization will be a dependent variable and no driver any longer if we have this causal if we take this causal relationship. And finally, polarization may lead to increased susceptibility or vulnerability to FIMI, and in this case, it will be an independent variable. So one and the same phenomena can be differently conceptualized depending on how we ask our research question, what our object of inquiry is, and at what level we place our inquiry. So basically, what we will propose within the project is to follow, especially when we deal with social scientific research, this part of the project, to follow some kind of causal relationship that we propose here. And it is important to bridge theory and practice, and because theory informs practice and practice informs theory, and in this way we can build more resilient societies. Thank you.
Sasho. The next speaker is actually one of the guys that put in practice all the academic knowledge. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dmitru Bilosh, who is co-founder and Chief Business Development Officer, if I'm not wrong, of Osavu company, a software company providing AI-based solutions for information security and countering disinformation. As I know, they are partnering with governments and international institutions, but I was really glad to hear from him yesterday evening that they are also now opening to other partners, including civil society organizations, academic organizations, and so on, for using their advanced technological solutions. So, Dmitry, the floor is yours. Sasha, could I have the clicker?
Thank you guys for being here. You're very brave. It's 4 p.m. Friday, you're still there. The motivation for new knowledge is very high, and I will try to correspond to that desire to stay here. So my name is Dmitry. I'm a co-founder and chief business development officer at Osavul. Essentially what we develop, we create AI-powered technologies for information environment assessment or narrative intelligence. As you know, it's especially useful when you run strategic communications, when you're responsible for countering disinformation, countering FIMI, no matter how you call it, you build a response for the activities of bad guys who try to influence your society. Our technologies, they analyze the data, they extract narratives, we're able to understand who is spreading these narratives, attribute to the certain government, and help all our partners to combat the threats that they are facing. Originally, I'm Ukrainian, that obviously we work a lot in Ukraine, and right now Osavul is the key solution for the security, governmental institutions in Ukraine, and probably we are the only private company in the world knowing how to fight the information war, not on papers or PDFs, but in real life, and we are happy to share our experience how it works. Besides that, we actively cooperate with our partners in the United States, in European Union, we work with NATO, and right now, as Todor mentioned, thank you for kind promotion and advertising, we cooperate more with the civil society. There are some partners even here in the room, few of them, so thank you for cooperation. Happy to see more people in our friendly group. Today, what I wanted to actually talk with you about is not like some very technical things. I want to talk about the key pillars and approaches to building resilience for governments, because we work a lot with them all over the world, both sides of ocean, and the problems are kind of the same. The scale can be different, right? Obviously, in Ukraine, you have much more threats than here in Bulgaria. But the tools to address the threats are the same. And in my humble opinion, there is 3 key pillars how we can approach this. So to make your state resilient towards internal threats, external threats, you need to have good situational awareness. You need to know what's happening on the ground, right? In the same way as if you are a soldier, if you are a general, you need to know what's happening on a battlefield. You need to understand what's happening in your society. Second thing, you need to have a good threat intelligence. You need to know where threats are appearing and who is doing them. And the third one, which is not the most obvious, but it's the threat sharing and collaboration. Especially here in Europe, where there is no extremely centralized government, there is many parties, a lot of cooperation consortiums. It's important to have a way to exchange information and have technological solutions and organizational approaches and legal frameworks to do so. So if you do these 3 things, you are good to go, and you can say that your society is kind of prepared for being resilient. So we'll dive into each of them to give some more context. So situational awareness, right? Part of our software is designed specifically for that. We grab the data from the open web, from social media, from websites, videos, pictures, whatever people communicate in all possible formats and languages. Then we apply AI to read all of that instead of you, because if you want to read everything that happened in Bulgaria in this week, you easily can land on maybe 10 million messages or 20 million messages only about politics, social, economical stuff. I'm not talking about your messages about the cats, right? I'm talking about the actual discussions in the public domain. So you need to have an AI that will read it instead of you and will give you a clear extracted narratives with a clear expectation who spread them, where are the foreign interference, where are the bots, and where is the nature of discussion, right? So to do that, at the first step, you need to know which societies, which narratives spread in your society. You need to have a certain narrative extraction capabilities. You can do it through AI, you can do it through humans, no matter how, but you need to know what are the key ideas spreading on the ground. Second, you need to know what are the key narratives spreading among your allies and among your adversaries. This is very important because our information environments, they don't exist in a vacuum. So information easily flow, especially in Europe where people speak few languages and there's borders in the information environment doesn't exist. People always consume information from not only from your local media. They read New York Times, they read foreign media, they talk with other people all over the world. That's why you need to know what's happening with those with whom you are friends. And you need to know what's happening about you, at least, with those with whom you are adversaries. So if we right now are having a pleasure to sitting in a NATO country, obviously, as a NATO country in Bulgaria, you need to know what's happening in Russia about Bulgaria. And especially with Russia, if you see what they say and what they communicate and what their government communicates specifically, you can predict their actions because they are extremely keen on doing information operations and information support before physical actions. They always announce what they do. That's why it makes them quite a comfortable adversary to scan. They have something to read on. And then last but not least, you need to know who is spreading these narratives. Either internally or externally. You need to know whether it's spread by humans, so it's actual public opinion, whether it's spread by bots, meaning that somebody put efforts and money into spreading that, whether it's spread by certain governments, meaning that you can see what is the official position. So if you have three elements, you're basically good to go with situational awareness and you know what's happening. Then, as a second thing, what you need to do, you need to know what are the threats. You need to build your own threat intelligence capabilities. Again, you can build them through tech, which is, in my perspective, much more convenient, but you can also have very trained analysts who will do their job manually. But at the end of the day, you, as the MOD, as an internal affairs, as a foreign affairs specialist, as a civil society representative working for society in your country, need to know what kind of threats are targeting you. Is there any? It might be there is no threats and it's a happy day. It might be that you have many threats and you need to think on that. First, you need to identify them. Then you need to see who is spreading them. By who, I mean not only which accounts, right? Because if you have 100 Twitter accounts, 5 Telegram channels spreading the threats and targeting you, so what? What you can do with that? Practically nothing, right? You can just write a fancy report and say to your boss that, hey, we saw this threat. And maybe the best thing what you can prepare a communication. But it's not enough because behind each particular threat, there is always a person, there is always an organization, and you can attribute it to them. Sometimes it's highly professional, military intelligence, or private companies that cooperate with them. So obviously, you will not be able to track down these people and to attribute it directly, at least. But sometimes, the people who do this, they are not extremely proficient, and they leave some traces online. And using open source data, everything that exists just in the internet, nothing private or hidden, you can find traces to a particular person, to a particular organization, to a particular bank account, to a particular address somewhere. And it allows you then, especially if you are in a government and you have some legal frameworks to do, track these people, track these organizations, and try to implicate some legal responsibility for what they're doing, because according to many norms, especially in Europe right now with DSA, this kind of stuff is becoming kind of a grayish area. And last but not least, once you have a threat and you know who is doing this, you need to define what you want to do with this. Do you want to hunt down these people and bring responsibility? Do you want to build your own strategic communications against that? Do you want to just drop this because it doesn't gain any traction and ignore? Once you have the good threat intelligence and good situational awareness with a good measurement, you can determine the next steps. And threat sharing. So I think this is extremely crucial because there is so many players. On this conference, there is a tons of organizations that do some kind of a FIMI research. All of you identify threats, write reports, publish them, communicate in your own bubbles. But at the end of the day, often people do not collaborate. And they do the same job twice, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. They do it over and over again, which is not effective, essentially. If you run your new investigation in Bulgaria, if I were you, I would want to know what was done in Bulgaria before, what was done during the last 3-5 years, and so on. To do that, all threats that are identified, in ideal world, should be recorded in a standardized format, meaning that each person all over the world can read this data and understand this. It should be recorded and stored in a standardized way. And if this standardization happens, then you can exchange this information in easy way if everybody is prepared to, all have a technological solutions to read this information and make reports. Then knowledge becomes shareable between NGOs and the governments, shareable between different states, especially in NATO, which is a organization about a collective response, right? It enables you collective action. But also with your partners outside of the NATO, partners on the level of European Union, states will be able to collaborate and respond more effectively. And then at the end of the day, if you collaborate, you can build a collective solution, what you want to do with this, and gain collective intelligence. So I think these three key pillars kind of give you an information advantage against your adversaries. Obviously, as a defenders, you are in a bad position as well as I am, because disinformation and influence operations, it's asymmetric weapon. It's very easy to attack and very hard to defend. But using that, we can make this hard a bit less harder. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you for attention, and let's chat further. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dmitry. So I really recommend you to check the OSCE website. They have quite interesting things there. Even I think they hide most of the interesting things, the most interesting things. But let me introduce our next speaker, Mrs. Ludmila Huntsman, who is founding director of Cognitive Security Alliance, a collaborative platform dedicated to combating malign influence, which has advised governments and private sectors. So she is also editor for the two journals, if I'm not wrong, Frontiers in AI and Frontiers in Big Data. So, Mrs. Hansen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your being here and your attention, and thank you so much for the organizers for this important panel. Just a little bit about myself. I've been an information professional for over 20 years. I started in the international development, working for the USAID projects and World Bank Group in Ukraine. And then I transitioned into global media, working for Voice of America, worked in programs that were funded by Defense Advanced Research Project Agency in cybersecurity research. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, I was tapped to be on the first Stratcom team at the Department of State, and what we did was attribution. That's what Dmitry brought up, that is extremely important. We need to know in our information environment who is saying what, because at the end of the day, we need to take a position and determine what is truth for ourselves. After my experience with the Stratcom, I returned to cybersecurity and developed cyber risk management programs for Ukraine, and that's where I found a gap. Cognitive security. We kept running into the cybersecurity paradox, where we saw that no matter how much money we invest in technology, it doesn't equate to the improvement in the information security posture. So basically it's a race, as Dmitry said, and that's a really deep look into the problem. Whenever there is a solution, technological solution, somebody's countering it. And so we're in this race where we really need to look into our internal resources, and that's where I started thinking about the cognitive side of things. And I did 2 research projects for the US Fulbright Scholar Program, focused on cognitive security models and how they could be infused into the cybersecurity infrastructure, because cognitive security is the human or soft end of cybersecurity. We as an organization is a small team that has both practical and research arm. And today I would like to talk about our original research. It's a Cohere-based approach to solving information integrity and potentially leading to automated cognition. But before that, I would like to tell you a little bit about the context in which we operate, because we need to have enough context in order to determine what's true, what's not true. Please look at this picture. Can somebody tell me what you think you see? Illusion, yeah. Yeah, so you may think that you see a triangle, a 3D triangle, but it's actually a visual paradox. You're very right. It's called an impossible triangle structure. It's based in Western Australia, and the concept behind this structure is the visual paradox that depending on your position in space and looking at the same object, you see a totally different thing. More importantly, the thing that you see, which appears like a 3D triangle, is mathematically impossible to construct. So we found this very inspiring, because it's a metaphor that describes our information space, where truth and illusions are very hard to tell apart sometimes. And we need to rely on science-based data and on science-based models in order to determine what's true and what's not, and in order to fight disinformation. And I'll return to this specific mathematical concepts later when I will be talking about our research. The only thing that I'd like to add is that it was popularized by a Canadian psychiatrist. His name is Penrose, and it's known as Penrose Triangle. And later, his son, Roger Penrose, won a Nobel Prize specifically for this, for proving that it's impossible to construct, and he called it the impossibility in its purest form. So going back to the context, in order to determine what we're talking about, in order to plan cognitive security operations, we need to first of all understand what we're talking about and what we're trying to achieve. And that's why it's important to define cognitive domain. The cognitive domain, cognitive warfare, hasn't been defined or conceptualized yet. So let me ask you this question. What is cognitive domain? What is cognition? So if somebody had the power to erase the higher cognitive beings from the universe, will cognition exist? Will our cognition still exist? And by cognition, we mean our ability to think, to acquire knowledge, to make decisions, to make conclusions, to internalize our knowledge, to direct our behavior. It includes intentions, motivations. So if somebody erased the higher cognitive beings from the universe, for sure we know that the information-based elements will still be there. That is texts, norms, laws, written language, symbols, etc. So this is the only part of the cognitive domain that we can measure and quantify, something that we can actually have, we can prove it in the real world. While cognitive-based elements, there's no way to measure or quantify them, right? There's no way to prove that they even exist. Like, for instance, white elephant, white elephant, white elephant, white. What do you see? Do you see white elephant? Do you envision the picture of white elephant? But is it real? How do we prove that it's real? Can you give me something specific so I can count how many elephants you envisioned in the room, right? Or how big they were? Or I can only trust you and your self-reported experiences, but we cannot measure and quantify it. But it's very hard in cognitive security operations, because we need to accept that those beliefs of our adversaries are real. And as Dmytro very correctly pointed, and other speakers, we, like on the defense side, we have to keep up and keep up and keep up, and we're always behind. So we need to think strategically about the offense side and plan the cognitive security operations that will defeat our enemy, right, our adversaries. So we need to understand their beliefs. For example, I'm going back to the slide and ask you to look at the functionally real beliefs, right? What are those? How do we do that? One example, there was a battle of Peronesia 500 years before our era when Persians annexed Egypt. What did they do? They brought cats to the battlefield. And Egyptians believed that a cat is a sacred animal that could never be hurt or never be harmed. Cats were gods. And so when Egyptians saw Persians and saw the cats on the battlefield, their beliefs were internalized so deeply that they stopped fighting because they couldn't harm a cat. And so the Peronesians won the battle, the Persians won the Battle of Peronesia and annexed Egypt. So when we talk about our adversaries and planning our cognitive security operations on the offense side, we always need to believe that our adversaries' beliefs are real, although we cannot quantify them, we cannot measure them, and so information. There has been a lot of discussion today whether it should be an Article 5, whether information, the threats carry their influence into the physical world, and yes, and yes, and yes. Russia and China have weaponized information and embedded information as a war-fighting function much earlier than the US did, Ukraine, or the West. So we have to face it. The Russian information law was passed in 2010, so Russian information agencies like Internet Research Agency and other, they get funding long-term and a lot of it. So the Gerasimov Doctrine, dated 2013, specifically stated that military means can be achieved with military goals can be achieved with non-military means. So we need to really take information as a safety issue because disinformation can kill, and it's a sort of like a critical infrastructure. And the proof of that was the NATO StratCom experiment that was done in 2017, where NATO manipulated the social media posts and information, and that they made it was a training exercise, not the real battlefield, but they made their soldiers leave positions. So it does have a physical effect in the military, in the physical, on the battlefield. And we're in the 5th generation of warfare, right, where there's still a massive kinetic element, but the human mind is the target, right? So it's a battle of wills. There are different conceptualization of cognitive warfare. The United States does not define cognitive warfare yet. NATO is expected to include cognitive warfare into its doctrine this fall. But there's some, I included this for the context, the definition of cognitive warfare. So some scholars consider it a subject of hybrid warfare that's linked to non-kinetic warfare and cyber and info warfare, but it focuses on cognitive effects. So it's something that affects our mind and leads to us changing our behavior. There's differentiation from information warfare, and that's very important. Where information warfare focuses on controlling information dissemination, and cognitive warfare aims to manage our reaction to that information among humans. So I'm going to leave you with this material, and you can look at the slides later. There are other definitions, there are harm dimensions, etc. I ask you to check our topic collection. that is called Disinformation Countermeasures and AI. There's an interesting article published by my colleagues at the University of Munich about this topic of cognitive warfare. So those of you who are interested, you can look further and research the context in which we operate. The key trends of the cognitive landscapes, I'll just be very quick with that. First of all is technological ascendancy. Many of you probably followed what General Zaluzhny has been saying and publishing, that we're in the technological, who wins the war? The one who has more and best technology wins the war. Commanding cognitive superiority. Who has cognitive dominance in the information space wins the information war. There's a vanishing divide between the military and civilian domains. Cybersecurity, for example, originated as a military jargon in 2002, and then it became ubiquitous. So is cognitive warfare is merging from military into civilian. The human brain is the target and the battleground. Strategic focus is destroying enemies' willpower. The most quoted book about this is The Art of War by the Chinese general Sun Tzu, and he basically said that we can use diplomacy, we can use technology, we can use anything to win the war without having to go to war. And of course, the key component is exploiting psychological vulnerabilities, weaponizing fear, anxiety, suspicion, and those are specific emotions that make disinformation go viral. That's why it's so persistent and hard to correct. As well as cultivating insecurity, uncertainty, and distrust to paralyze our decision-making. So our cognitive security methodology, cognitive resilience methodology includes public-private partnerships, AI solution, technological solution, which I'll cover in a minute, enhanced critical thinking. There are ways to work with our brain to make our brain more resilient, step into our internal intrinsic resources, research of cognitive biases and safeguards, of course, preemptive shielding with inoculation theory, that's very important. And so a few words about the key findings of our research. If you look at the middle 3 pictures and use your imagination, so these are the 3 elements, right? Imagine these are data structures. Can you put these 3 pieces together? And if you put them together, it's going back to that Penrose triangle. How will it look? Will it look like this picture? Or will it look like picture on the other side? Is it possible to put these 3 elements and make it like the picture on the right? The quick answer is that it's not possible. So the idea behind our approach is that we can use LLMs to group the local data into global data structure that could be reasoned over, that we could use some sort of algorithmic computation of, and arrive to the conclusion whether this data is coherent or incoherent. And that's all science-based because this, if the data appear, it looks something like that on the right, it's incoherent. It's not possible. So science tells us that this is not true. So our hypothesis is twofold, that LLMs can accurately compile local information into natural data structures, and that this efficient computation can lead to useful forms of machine cognition. We started with the motivating application in disinformation. This work is published, and there'll be a reference at the end, so you can look at the paper and learn more about the approach. So this is how we do it. As you see, we use the propositional pairs of logical consistency of claims. We add different ask LLMs to add some weights. Positive weight is in blue, negative weight is in red. There's another diagram on the right. There's 512 ways to do it mathematically. I won't go into detail, but the key findings of our research is that LLMs can outperform humans in a key task. So on the right, you see the graph that was put together by the world coherence expert, Paul Thagard, and his results are in red, and ChatGPT performed the same sort of operations. The results are in blue, and we see that ChatGPT, there were four places where they disagreed, and ChatGPT was right in all the four. Coherence-driven agents can act ethically. Basically, we can program our agent to act ethically. For example, we can say, Ukrainian soldier's life is important. It means that the agent can harm or shoot an adversary. Or we can say human life is important. And then it means that the agent will preserve human life no matter what. No matter so it's ends-based ethics and rules-based ethics. There are two different, depending what ethics you care about, you can program the coherence agent and it will do the computations. So it's a versatile framework that has been used widely. You can see the link, computational cognitive sciences research, you can check it out. And what we arrived to was very important is that we could see how this carries, how LLMs and cognitive space are intertwined. For example, if we take observations as data, it corresponds to cognitive function of fusing and perceiving. If we use evidence and hypotheses as data, it corresponds to cognitive function of judging. If we use tasks and goals as data, corresponds to cognitive function of planning. And now, very important, if you use generating optimizing data, for example, you tell LLMs, give me a list of propositions and prioritize what's important, it will do it. And so that corresponds to cognitive function of creating. So that we found that as we started with this information, we came to the conclusion that this sort of approach leads to automated cognition. So I'm going to go to we did the case study. We are really confident in our data. And the final thoughts, why am I here on this panel when Todor invited me? Because the problem of disinformation is so big and challenging. No single stakeholder can solve it. Technology alone will not solve it. Scientific research in social studies, the fact-checking, anything. We need to work together. We need cross-sectional expertise. We need alliances with civil society, governments, academia, NGOs. We need to work together because we all bring different perspectives, and that's why it's very important. And you'll get the selected references in the slides. Please check out our topic collection. It has officially launched. It's called Disinformation Countermeasures and Artificial Intelligence in Frontiers. I'm the editor. You'll find me there. If you have anything that you'd like to publish, please talk to me. Find me on LinkedIn, and I look forward to talking to you after the presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Ludmila. Just to remind you that all the presentations from not only from this session but from the whole forum will be online on the website, probably on Monday or Tuesday. So be patient, but you will find them there. So our last speaker is Professor Andriy Pazyuk. I hope that I pronounce your family name, Andriy, correct. He is coming from the National Aviation University of Ukraine, but he is also the CEO of the Ukrainian Academy of Cybersecurity. He is distinguished legal advisor with extensive experience working on cybersecurity, privacy, and digital governance policies, and he has taken part in formulating some of the acting security and cybersecurity and resilience strategies for the government of Ukraine. So, Andriy, the floor is yours.
Thank you for invitation, and it's my pleasure to be here. I will be very short in this presentation, just to give you more opportunity for questions to our distinguished speakers. And so what our research is about, so in this ecosystem of disinformation, let's say, we need to find right actors to with whom we can, I mean, social actors like civil society, governments can interact in countering disinformation. And of course, social media platforms, private actors should be our partners in this work. So that's why this research is intended to analyze how social media platforms adopted policies to be in line with recent regulations in European Union, especially Digital Services Act, which is empowered these platforms with tasks to deal with different types of requests, to manage content posted, and to be in charge for regulating content. But AI-generated content raises new questions, and this new technology used to drive different content moderation used by different platforms. So we analyzed how different social media platforms already adopted to these challenges. And first of all, what is constitutes this AI-generated disinformation? So AI used to generate deepfakes. AI generates texts which aligned with specific requests by who is in charge of managing AI. So that's why it's easily made proliferation of users and target audience, and in this way AI is very powerful tool for generating content which is much more sophisticated and advanced to the needs. So for platforms, it's a first challenge, a detection of this AI-generated content. Second is recent policy gaps and the need for adaptation. And we can see also and observed inconsistency in enforcement of the rules established already in the European Union in Digital Services Act. So this is have a huge impact on understanding what is happening in this environment, in social media, and how it influences democratic processes. Yes, so algorithms amplify disinformation, and this is very advanced content, and it amplifies polarization. And of course, these elections, which we observed recently, and results of these elections can be an evidence what happened in social media, how that influenced results of the elections in the United States. So the European Union has performed a study, and based on the findings by some civil society organizations a year ago, it's so-called doppelganger campaign. Russian-enabled botnets used different sophisticated tools, like they are. It was a FIMI campaign targeting especially European countries and populations. So they cloned websites, first of all, and then they used reference to these cloned websites to publishing this content. They used different geo-blocking tactics and sophisticated tools, and that is documented already by European Union. So this study was presented to European Commission, and they revealed platforms' vulnerabilities that they can't counteract to these campaigns. So what was the response from major social media platforms? So Meta, Facebook, and Twitter, they established fact-checking partnership with stakeholders like civil society. YouTube established AI-driven moderation of the content, and TikTok used user-driven labeling. But all these techniques used by this social media impose challenges for end users, so because it's inconsistent enforcement, limited algorithmic transparency, and also reliance on user labeling, which is also subjective and does not really perform this uniform law enforcement of the rules. So what recommendations we can provide for this policy? So first of all, we need to introduce algorithmic transparency, which will disclose content prioritization factors. We need to engage cooperation between different platforms and improve frameworks in the EU, especially introduce new guidelines needed to implement what is intention of the policy. And we need to educate users to recognize AI manipulated content. So that's briefly findings, and I would like to share also our previous research. You can use this QR code, and this is study of cyber warfare. So 10 years analyzed of warfare, cyber warfare in Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And we, in our study, established correlation between cyber attacks and kinetic attacks. So it also very closely to the understanding of cognitive warfare. And unfortunately, we see that cyber tools used for intelligence, and it could be used for good, for example, for identifying civilian objects which should not be attacked. But unfortunately, our enemy used it for precise targeting. And we witnessed it in July when, after intelligence, cyber intelligence, Russian, they attacked children's hospital in Kiev this year. So it's terrible. So you can use this research, you can upload it, and you can find correlations. So at least 3 weeks before kinetic attacks, Russian used cyber intelligence. And then during and after kinetic attacks, they also use intelligence for identifying what has happened, what movement of people, movement of targets, and so on and so on. So that's elements of cognitive warfare. And we also analyzed how information campaigns was connected with cyber attacks for this last 10 years. So please use this report. And another one is mostly for policy analysis. So we analyzed EU policies in the cyber field and Ukrainian adaptation to these policies. For those of you who are interested in strengthening EU-Ukraine strategic cyber solidarity and cooperation, please use this report. It also includes reference to documents about current cooperation between Ukraine and European Union, especially with ENISA, European Network Information Security Agency, and other activities. So that's all from my side, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach me also on LinkedIn and through this email. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andriy. We still have, let's say, 10 minutes for questions from the hall. So, any questions to the speakers? Yeah. There will be a mic, just a moment. Thank you.
What is the question?
Okay, I have a question. I have a question for Ludmila. Out of the research work you've been doing, have you developed some actually practical tools or models that could be reused or upgraded, or it was just a one-off exercise?
That's a good question. I didn't get a minute to talk about it. But this specific research, we have other R&D projects under our belt, but this specific project is before proof of concept. We are hoping to get funding for it to turn it into a program. And if it's, so that's one way, but ultimately we look for partners to transition from concept to deployment through a public-private partnership. Because there are different applications for this specific thing, and we're looking into lawfare. It can be used to analyze jurisprudence consistencies. There are other applications. We started with disinformation, and we discovered that it's scalable, and I would love to talk about it later. Not to monopolize all the time, but thank you for your question.
Thank you. Other questions? I have one, if there are not other, I have one provocative question to all of you. What do you think, who is more skillful in using all this knowledge, AI, technologies and so on? So we and our allies or the adversaries? What do you say? Because usually we would say we are so many countries in NATO, in the European Union, outside European Union. On the other side, there are only few we can actually count on the one hand.
So how do we call these technologies?
Who is more skillful and more effective in using all these technologies and knowledge about this information? Well, we or our adversaries?
Maybe I can answer. It's a tough question because we are in a position of protection mainly. At least I'm not aware of any significant, offensive program. I mean, something that is done, on a huge level, right? So we are in a protection position, and adversaries are in an attacking position. And as I told, there is no parity. Attacking, it's much easier and much cheaper than defending. And it gives them a significant advantage just because they do it this way. At the same time, I think that they are less advanced in new technologies. They apply approaches, and there were some leaks about the also commercial companies that work in Russia for their government. And it's on the level of, like, I would say maybe 2016, 15, something like that, which is not bad product, but it's just like a bit obsolete. But it's good enough for them. And the thing is about technology is not to make the best technology that has the best model or whatsoever. It just makes the technology that works. And for their purposes, I think it's good enough. So I think that because they're in a more favorable position, I think they have the initiative. From our side, we need to act faster because there are so many stakeholders. It's kind of moving slower than it could. So we need to, have more higher velocity.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Yeah?
Yeah, I would like to add to that because there are so many dimensions here. First dimension, disinformation is fueled by profit, right? You all remember the image of the smoke behind the Pentagon, and that generated the market swap of $500 billion within 5 minutes. So how easy it is to make deepfake? Very easy, right? Tools are all available. It's all open source. You don't have to invest any money. And you can make a lot of money. So there always will be bad guys who will go and who will manipulate us even for profit. Defense, yes, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Mostly governments invest in it. But going back to that cybersecurity paradox, the technology is always a race, right? There's some sort of solution, it's being countered, and it's always like that. But we need to invest into our internal policy solutions. We need more policy solutions. We need solutions for education. We need solutions for healthcare, because we can train these AI native children, generations who's growing up, to use their internal resources, not to fall victim of disinformation. So technology is only a part of it, and money is only a part of it.
Well, any other questions? Yes? The mic is coming. Sorry, Andrew wants to add something.
I can predict your next question and answer it. Yeah. So what to do with what we have? So yeah. So the answer is not. We can invest in security. Yeah, and we can invest, but we limited with resources. So what is needed? We use now this concept of resiliency. So resiliency means that we need to act asymmetrically, and we need to be innovative. We need to adapt to changing circumstances. We need to be prepared for sure, but we need to be flexible in reactions and in capacity to not to be shocked, not to be killed. We need to be resilient by design, by training, not by catastrophe. So that's the answer to the next question, how we need to improve situation to benefit us from what is happening in technological development and advancement by our adversary.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely agree what also Ludmila underlined as inoculation theory. So we need to have preventive approach. So there was a question, please.
Yes, thank you. I think it will touch at least the fields of 3 of the speakers, but it's mainly for Mr. Georgiev. I know that in Bulgaria we're losing the battle in the cognitive warfare field. At least this is my perception. Especially, and we know where this happens. So it happens in groups in Facebook. We know the machine with doppelganger sites. We know that people are paid or probably are just stupid enough to replicate content. And then we have this cognitive warfare. I would say it's a penetration in national security in my personal perception as a citizen. So we know where it happens. We know how it happens. We know who does it. What do we miss in the picture to stop the process? Is it legislation? Is it the lack of administration, some institutional gaps? Is it communication? What do we miss to stop the process so that we actually stop losing souls to the process? Thank you.
So, first of all, I don't think it's only an institutional problem. This fight is not fair. Institutions should follow legals. We have legal framework, and we cannot go outside this network. But we need help from the civil society, from the technology companies, who has to do their part. Of course, we just started with this, what we are doing in the information center, for example. But also, we need a clear StatCom strategy at higher level of government rule. Unfortunately, actually it is not unfortunately, but most of the politicians, I think, already know that, and probably they will start work on it as soon as we have a government which can take these decisions. Now, this government is appointed to organize elections. It is not a political government, and it cannot lead such a process. So, in my opinion, and what we are doing, it's the scope, it's the narratives who are considering Ministry of Defense. So you have a point, we are losing that war, but I think that war, that not only we losing that war, our allies are losing it too. We cannot, for example, we cannot use trolls in social media. We are defense ministry, but we count, not about the trolls of course, but we really count on civic society organizations. We get a lot of help, especially from Center of Democracy and other civic society organizations. And to win this war, we need one thing. We need to take the initiative. Only who have the initiative win the war. Unfortunately, not only in Bulgaria, but I think in whole Europe, the problem with the initiatives on communications level, on propaganda level, on Stratcom levels are not in our favor.
Thank you. One last question, but please be very brief, and the answer also.
I wasn't going to ask a question. I was going to support my colleague in his answer, but I don't think I could tell it better than him. You're right, we're on the back foot, and we should get our act together soon. And this is why we have all these people around the table. Notice where we are. We're in the military information, military club. We try to do it as well as we can, but it does require a national strategy, which requires political consensus, to give you the short answer. Thank you for answering actually to Joro.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that our panel deserves applauses. So thank you very much to all of you. And thank you. I think there is a short break now according to the agenda, and then the forum continue with the concluding sessions.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I sent you a few we should work together. Thank you for the presentation. We spoke earlier, but we should be friends. I think I sent you a friend request. You guys take.